please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
India's power sector is heading to a crisis. Currently, about 50,000 megawatts of projects are stressed either for want of power purchase agreements from DISCOMs or for want of coal or gas. The Reserve Bank's recent circular orders that all stressed loans over 2,000 crore must be resolved or taken to the NCLT, the bankruptcy court, in 6 months. So, are 2 lakh crore worth of power loans about to head to the NCLT, and eventually will a bulk of that get liquidated? That's the question we are asking. In a bit, we are going to be joined by the Power Secretary to answer that question. But before that, let me present to you the numbers in detail. Well, first up, let us look at the total number of stressed power capacity. 19,700 megawatts of power capacity has no PPAs, which means nobody is going to buy that power. Then losses because of under-recovery on the part of DISCOMs, T&D losses, that's about 11,700 megawatts. No gas is available for several projects, that is 10,500 worth of megawatts. And finally, changes in law in other countries, like in Indonesia, I'm basically referring to the Mundra plant, that leaves 9,800 megawatts of capacity useless or stressed. So totally, that's 51,804 megawatts of power that is stressed. Now, of this, there are 23,000 for, let us come to capacity that is under construction. 23,091 megawatts is under construction. That also is stressed for want of either NPAs or gas. So totally, what is the stressed amount? 74,895. Almost 75,000 megawatts look like stressed. Let us only take the ones with finished capacity, which is that original 51,000. From that 51,800 megawatts, let us deduct 9,000 megawatts, which is which is the Mundra plant. Tatas and Adanis, considering that they are deep-pocketed conglomerates, will not renege on their loans. So those loans will not go to NCLT. What is the balance? 42,800 megawatts could go to the NCLT. I just want to remind you that the Reserve Bank rule states that in 6 months, if stressed loans are not resolved, they have to be taken to the NCLT. That cutoff date is September 30th. So in all probability, 42,800 megawatts are going to the NCLT. Now, who will buy it in the NCLT? Let us look at it in terms of rupees crore. For 1 megawatt construction, 1 megawatt would cost a company 4 crore rupees. So for the construction of this entire 42,800 megawatts, about 1.7 lakh crore has already been spent. That is the kind of money which will look for buyers in the NCLT or eventually go into liquidation. Will anyone buy these? Let us point out again why they are stressed. 19,700 or almost 20,000 megawatts has no PPAs, and 10,500 has no gas. Now, why would anyone come to the NCLT and buy these? Which means basically, if you multiply this by 4 rupees per megawatt, by 4 crores per megawatt, 1.2 lakh crore is not going to find buyers even in the NCLT because they are unviable projects for want of buyers or for want of raw material. That much could go from the NCLT into liquidation. That is the dire state in which the power sector finds itself. Well, now let me look at what might turn the situation. There is hope in the air. We've got several states towing the Prime Minister's policy and promising 24/7 power. As well, this is an year of elections, and during elections, normally governments promise 24/7 electricity, and consumption of power normally increases. Separately, we have seen the cost, the price of power increasing, and the IEX, which is an exchange that sells power for alternate days, for 2 days. There, the power rate has gone up by 25% to 4 rupees a unit. And for slightly shorter term, 6-month power, what you call merchant power, the rates have again gone up by around 20% to 3.5 to 4 rupees per unit. I mean, as power rises, more and more stressed plants can become viable. That is a hope. But the point is the bottleneck. The bottleneck comes from the fact that nobody is signing power purchase agreements. In the last 5 years, only 7,000 megawatts of power purchase agreements have been signed, whereas, you know, we have 50,000 megawatts just lying unutilized. Discoms can sign because this is not a country that has got as much power as it can consume. But the power distribution companies and state governments are not signing PPAs because they don't have money to pay for that extra power. That really is the bottleneck. There is need, but need is not backed by the power to buy. That really is the crisis that the country faces. And because of this bottleneck, it might well be that 2 lakh crore or at least 1.2 lakh crore of power projects may go to the NCLT and eventually go for liquidation. So, to answer the question as to whether the government has a game plan for this, we will in a minute after this break speak to the Power Secretary. But before that, let's get you some important voices from the power sector on what they make of the dire power situation.
You have got at least 10 to 12, 15,000 megawatts of generation capacity in the private sector only, which is backed down due to non-availability of coal. So there are constraints both on the production side because the Coal India failed to meet its target this year by about 5%, as well as on the evacuation and infrastructure side. I really don't see this correcting itself in the near future because, you know, infrastructure is something which the government can't create overnight. And similarly is the case with coal production. Coal India cannot ramp up its production overnight. They'll take some time to ramp up the production. So I see these prices sustaining during these summers at least when the demand is high.
During this year, the power demand has grown by 6% till date. And it has been growing quarter on quarter. Last year, this growth was 2.5%. And in the current quarter, quarter 4, the growth is in excess of 7.5%. Effectively, coal supply has to go up by 11-12%, whereas the coal supply has gone up by only 6.3% during the current financial year. So that's what is creating a catch-22 situation, that the oversupply of power generator is there in the system, but there is no enough coal which can meet this kind of a power demand.
The price increase was because of less supply of power, and we had less of hydro generation also in these months, and in fact nuclear generation also went down. So there was more pressure on the thermal generation, and coal supply side also there are few issues. Demand is growing almost at a rate of 6 to 7%, and if coal supply don't increase at this rate, definitely the prices will increase. And looking at what price discovery has happened on the deep platform for the next 4 or 5 months duration contracts, the prices are in the range of 4.5 rupees to 5 rupees.
This year is going to be an election year in many of the large states who are the consumer states. Secondly, how the monsoon is going to behave. Just today only, early morning, we got a forecast. SkyMet has come out with a forecast of a normal monsoon. But then but they have also stated that in peninsular India as well as Northeast, there is going to be a deficit. The IMD is also going to come out with the forecast. So all those factors will play an important role.
Speak to us about what would be the government perspective. Ajay Kumar Bhalla, Power Secretary, joins us now. There are so many questions to ask you, but let me start first with this potential bunch of companies that have stressed loans. If not resolved, they will be taken to the NCLT. What's the government's view? So many, probably 30, 35 companies coming to the NCLT.
See, some of these companies are already in the process of getting resolved. If you recall, some time back there was an auction of coal linkage Shakti to about 10 plants. Now that the coal has started flowing, I mean FSAs have been signed, PPAs have been revised, and those plants are supposed to be turning around now. So I mean like there are different reasons for different plants. So wherever possible we are addressing those. Now the areas like lack of equity by the promoters, Bankers are looking at it whether the change of ownership can help. I mean, they have about 6 months time to do it. In that time, if they are able to find a new buyer, they will be able to do it. Now, there are some cases like where the coal blocks have got into disputes despite auction because of aggressive bids by some of the promoters. Now, these are the areas where again Shakti policy has catered for coal linkage or e-auction of coal, which can address to these plants also. And on top of that, what we are doing as a pilot, which I mentioned earlier also, about 2,500 megawatt aggregation we are trying to do as a pilot to see whether in medium term this can bring in some PPAs and some of these plants can sell their power. So that process is ready. PFC on behalf of would be doing this tendering through an aggregator. Let's see what happens in that case. So there are different interventions we have made at different points.
Okay, well actually if I looked at the APPAI's report, there are 51 gigawatts, 51,000 megawatts that are under stress. Of this, if you take away Mundra, because both Tatas and Adanis are deep-pocketed investors, then you are still left with 43,000 megawatts, sir. You're talking about 2,500. Of this 43,000, probably about 9,000 are gas-based plants where really there isn't any hope at all that anything will happen. No, gas-based is 10,581 megawatts. There are remaining 19,700 megawatts which have projects with domestic coal but no PPA, imported coal but no PPA, and projects with no coal and no PPA. Together it is 19,700 plus 10,500 gas. We are looking at, you know, at least 32,000 where who will buy if there is no PPA? What's the government's answer to those 32,000 megawatts?
See, originally, I mean, there was coal-based stress was about 40,000 megawatts, out of which because of Shakti more than 10,000 has already been retrieved. And wherever we are able to get some additional power, there has been growth in the recent times. And in exchange also the prices are going up, and some of these plants would be able to sell coal in the exchange also. So demand is on the up. I mean, let's see how it goes. I mean, as I said, 10,000 megawatts have been brought out of coal intervention only. Let's see as a trial if we can do little more for the coal-based plants. And if it picks up, then definitely we'll repeat the pilot, and then it becomes a system that DISCOM start contracting on a medium-term basis.
Okay, to just take that point forward, Mr. Bhalla, if you could put in context the current demand-supply situation. I'm looking at the the exchange. Even today, clearing rates on IEX are about 3.5 thereabouts. And then there have been reports, because spot rates are rising, that maybe DISCOMs are willing to now do PPAs. So that could, of course, alleviate stress for a lot of entities that can't find power buyers. So if you could just, you know, connect the dots for us and put it in context.
See, there has been little shortage of coal in some of the power plants, and some of the power had to be backed on because of high demand but lack of coal availability in some power plants. So that definitely has pushed the coal prices in the power prices in the exchange. You know, exchange is a very good indicator of stock of coal in the power plants. But now, I mean, in the month of March, we have almost on an average got 274 rakes per day. And we have been able to build the stocks of about 16 plus million tons in the power plants, which is about 10 days stock. Still, some of the plants are with lesser stock also. But efforts are on to build on. But in month of January, February and March, the growth has been more than 5% month-to-month basis. Overall growth definitely in the country is 5.2%. And coal-based growth is 4.5% if we discount the renewables out of it. Now, in that case, I mean, there is definitely utilization of coal also was very, very high. For a few months in the year, the coal consumption was more than the coal receipt. So the stocks got depleted in the first few months of the financial year. But now again, we have built up the stocks. Now, with this, I mean, another indication is that yes, there is a growth and some of these plants are turning around. Let me tell you that state governments have excess PPAs already in their kitty. And some of the state government DISCOMs had surrendered the PPAs to us at times, saying that we don't want this coal. The trend is reversing. We are now request from the state governments to get back their quota which was allotted earlier. and start getting power. Already, I mean, our DVC and NTPC are getting these PPAs signed.
Okay. No, I take your point, sir, that PPAs are, more PPAs would be an answer. But we don't have discoms that have deep pockets, and we don't have state governments that have deep pockets. So, I mean, I'm still coming back to my first question. The clock has started ticking. March 1st, the Reserve Bank's clock started, and it ends on September 30th. At that time, 32,000 megawatts, possibly, or even more, could come to the NCLT. Should there not be an overarching plan? Separately, the State Bank of India chairman has also written to the government about the Mundra plant, and, you know, whether you can continue to expect even big groups like Tatas and Adanis to run a plant which every unit that is produced is going to create a loss for them. So really, two questions for you. Does the government of India have anything for that 32,000 which will come to the NCLT first?
As I said, I mean, our interventions are basically to facilitate coal availability.
Sir, that was, yeah, Mr. Bhalla, you know, I have taken your point on that, sir.
Extra PPAs.
Sir, I have taken your point on that. You know, 10,000 megawatts has brought the amount of stress probably from, you know, 45,000 to closer to 35,000. But that 35,000 is still left, and you have all of 5 months or less than that, 4.5 months for that to be resolved. So is there some national, you know, bad bank that can buy this?
Tell me a plant. See, then let's look at some of the cases. If the promoter had bid an aggressive PPA and the tariff is so low, I mean, even if it is taken over by another owner, it will not be able to sell power at that price. It will not be viable to sell the power at that price, because he is not able to service the debt. So bankers have looked at many of these plants and have put them on either SDR or S4A or different options which were available to them. Wherever takers are there, bankers are settling with them, and hopefully by September they would be able to. But wherever there are no takers for these plants, I don't think we have any other alternative but to go to NCLT.
Sir, last simple question. Really, one fails to understand the sanctity of PPAs, and I know we've discussed this in the past as well, that when rates shoot up, spot rates shoot up, now you're saying that states are willing to consider PPAs again. When rates are down, they throw their hands up and say that no, we'd rather buy from the spot market. Are you looking at a permanent fix for this? Because how does a corporation run a power plant without having any sanctity to the power purchase agreement?
No, definitely we have not accepted any state governments surrendering PPAs just like that, and we have insisted upon this power to be bought under the PPA. It's a pure contract between the two parties which needs to be honored. Government of India has been very, very clearly mentioning it to the state governments and discoms that they have to honor the power purchase agreements which they have signed. So, I mean, there are, in some PPAs there were clauses to mutually sort of come out of the power purchase agreements, which some of the states have used, and even the generator has also accepted the compensation payments and all. So those are the, I mean, purely contractual clauses. One has to look at each case separately and look at it. As far as Government of India is concerned, our advisory, our policy is very clear that these PPAs need to be honored. These are contractual commitments of the discoms.
Okay, so sir, you will be okay with 32,000 megawatts going for liquidation? Not NCLT, liquidation.
Not all will not go for liquidation. As I said, bankers, yeah, I am saying this will not go to NCLT also. Some of these plants are under already restructuring with the bankers, and it was under restructuring in the previous, before the RBI circular. So bankers, some of the places, bankers are hopeful. I mean, I may not have progress of each and every plant right now with me, but we understand from our PFC, REC type of NBFCs that some of the projects could be, which are easily retrievable, bankers would be able to, provided they get a reasonable value for it.
Okay, so how many, from that APPAI list, which you must be very familiar with, how many do you think can be salvaged? And how many may go to NCLT and liquidation?
It will be difficult for me to say because I don't have the status of each and every plant up to date with me. But there are efforts going on in the plants which are possible to be retrieved.
Will half be saved?
Some of the plants where promoters have lost all, no equity available. It's very difficult to put numbers. As I said, each plant has a different problem. In some places, the DISCOM dues could be a problem, and there we are intervening and trying to get the DISCOMs release payments to these plants. In some cases, the equity has run dry. I mean, bankers are looking at a new owner. Like this, there are different baskets. I mean, one has to look at what can be retrieved and what cannot be.
Can you leave us
and
with
let's see by September, some of these definitely will turn around.
So sir, we take your point that all of it will not go for liquidation. Can you leave us with a rough ratio where you think that within the NCLT process, there will be resolution? There will be buyers and, you know, some of the issues, whether it's PPAs, whether it's coal availability, or DISCOM payments, will be able to intervene and solve. So therefore, the new buyer has reason to buy the asset. And what might, the residual that might end up in liquidation. So maybe some numbers, some guidance on this, sir.
No, I mean, very difficult to say. As I said, some of the plants where construction has just started and nothing much is available on the ground, bankers also won't be able to find a solution to it. So those plants definitely go to NCLT. But the plants which are commissioned, which are having some financial issues, bankers can retrieve it. Definitely bankers are interested in not losing the money which they have put in these plants. So they would like to retrieve whatever is possible. And whatever assistance is required from the government is willing to provide that. We are ready with whatever possibility of facilitation is required, we would do that.
Okay, so we will have occasion to invite you yet again, sir, when you have more clarity on how many plants can be saved. But at the moment, it is 51,800 megawatts that are completely built and stressed, and another 23,091 which are under construction and are going to get stressed. So if you're looking
let me add the private plants. The PLF for the 17-18 is on the up. They have crossed the 60% mark also in this financial year.
Okay, yes.
So there is definitely a turnaround of PLF increasing beyond 60.
Yeah, I take your point, sir, 61%, but that's still a long way off from making them break even. Thank you very much for your patience and for speaking to us at CNBC TV18.